Some of the main highlights of the rest of the text, and it's a very lengthy text, lengthier, as I said, than even the selections that we have here, and probably not worthy of going through line by line by line, unless you're just a real fanatic for Aristotle and you really want to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. There's a lot in here that if you just really want to get into the minutiae, you can, but essentially the most important things that you need to kind of be aware of as you're reading through it are the fact that Aristotle lays out three types of speeches: deliberative, forensic, and epideictic. We can break these down looking at them from different perspectives. Deliberative speeches are the kind of speeches you would give in a legislative body or a deliberative body, some body that's going to, or group of people that are going to make laws. Deals with the future. Okay, and the focus, according to Aristotle anyway, is mostly on the speaker. That's debatable, but be that as it may. The future, like what are we going to do? Right? What should we do? Should we pass a law against this or that? Should we regulate parking in the city of Denton? Should we pass a new law with respect to the tax code? That sort of thing. It deals with what should we do going forward. Forensic speeches deal with the past, uncovering truth about the past. The appeal here, according to Aristotle, is mostly to the audience. Again, it's up to you to decide whether you think that's true or not. But it's the kind of speech you would give with respect to a criminal investigation or trying to make a speech about what has happened in the past already. Forensics, criminology, that's a good way to kind of link those up, try to keep them in straight. Epideictic is oftentimes considered a celebratory or a commemorative type of speech. It's the kind of speech you would give at a wedding or a funeral, the kind of speech that you would give to introduce somebody, if somebody was winning an award, or it might be the kind of speech that you would just give on a special occasion, like a holiday. Maybe you give a 4th of July speech or a Memorial Day speech, or maybe you give a speech at Christmas or Thanksgiving or a major holiday, maybe at a kid's bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. The subject is the person. Now there I don't have much qualm with Aristotle on that, because the focus is on the subject, the person or the event or the activity, the day, the celebration, the holiday, and it's about the present. It's set in the present, right? What do we think of this person or this occasion today, now, right? So it's fairly easy. That's pretty good. And you know what? These three types of speeches, Aristotle's first one to lay these down for everybody to look at and to consider. We still go by these largely today. If you ever study Toulmin rhetoric, you'll see that we have claims of policy, claims of value, claims of fact, and they actually line up. Deliberative would be claims of policy, forensic would be claims of fact, epideictic would be claims of value. And so you can see how it's stuck with us for well over 2,000 years. This is how people tend to categorize types of speeches. The work then spends a lot of time, and this is where you got to kind of put yourself on cruise control a bit, listing and discussing the types of proofs and the types of speeches, comparing, contrasting, enumerating. But the structural genius of the work, and here we're not talking about the philosophical genius of the work. Early on in the work, the great thing that the rhetoric does is it defines rhetoric. It says what it is. It says what its relationship is to dialectic or logical reasoning. It gives us the types of proof. It does all that sort of thing pretty quickly in a very, very perfunctory manner, very in your face and up front. But what the rest of the work does is it provides us this wonderful framework that integrates all of those philosophical ideas that he threshed out in the first few pages regarding proof and reasoning and the types of rhetorical situations and whatnot, all of those things regarding proof and reasoning with the kinds of rhetorical situations or occasions that the speaker might find himself in. Okay, and when we're talking about rhetorical situation, you'll hear people use the word kairos. That's the situation that the speaker finds himself or herself in. Okay, so if you're in the front of a group of people who are politically opposed to your ideas, that's a particular type of kairos. That's a situation. It's quite different from the type of situation or kairos that you would be faced with if you were in a room full of people who are going to be sympathetic to what you're talking about, or maybe what you're talking about is an idea or a concept that they are thoroughly unfamiliar with, or they have a passing familiarity with it, or they have thorough familiarity with it. All those would be different situations that a speaker would find himself or herself in with respect to the audience and the occasion and the forum or format or the venue. All of those play into this question of kairos or situation. And so what he's doing is he's worked out the philosophical questions, issues, definitions regarding proof and reasoning, he thinks, or at least a lot of people do, and he's wedding that with the actual pragmatic situations, occasions, or circumstances that the speaker finds himself in. That's the genius structurally of the text. He seems to be covering lots and lots of ground here. He talks about audience. He talks about types of proof. He talks about types of evidence that's going to appeal to this audience or that audience. Or when you're in this circumstance, you should use this type of argument. When you're in that circumstance, you should never use one of these. You should use one of these, right? Along the way, we have Aristotle laying out for us what he sees as three canons or studies or foci, plural of focus, of study when you're studying rhetoric. Another way to look at this is, what's he say are the three things you need to practice at or be good at, the three skills, the three aptitudes you need to develop to be good at rhetoric. The one is finding the sources of proof. And again, in the ancient mind, it was not so much the idea of inventing or coming up with brand new arguments. No. Their view was, there ain't no such thing as anything new on planet Earth. Your job as a speaker is to become familiar with types of arguments, memorize them, and when the occasion requires it for you to stand up and give a speech, you need to be really good at retrieving arguments that you've already learned and committed to memory. So for them, the whole idea of coming up with your arguments for your speech would be a matter of retrieval. Okay, going and finding the thing tucked away in some mental file cabinet in your cranium. Okay, so the first thing you got to be good at, first canon, in other words, is that you've got to find all the sources of proof out there available to you. Okay, the available means of persuasion in his definition, right? Second, you've got to craft it in a way that's pleasing and memorable style. And third, you've got to organize it properly. Now, when we get to Cicero, and that's going to be our next time around, a later lesson, Cicero quite astutely says, you know what, there are not three canons, there are 5 canons. Now, he's not the first to do it, but he's the first one to really, really go thoroughly into it. And what's missing from Aristotle's 3 canons are delivery and memory. Okay? So for Aristotle, there are 3 canons, 3 skills, 3 focuses of study, foci of study, 3 things. Another way to look at it is, if you were to ask somebody in basketball, what are the 5 most important skills, or the 3 most important skills, or the 2 most important skills that you need to have, no matter what position you play, if you're going to be a good basketball player? Well, then the person might say, well, you've got to be good at shooting, and at dribbling, and at passing, or maybe rebounding, or maybe some other skills, right? So that's what we're talking about here. Only we're not talking about basketball, we're talking about being a good speaker or rhetoric, right? What are the skills, what are the canons of rhetoric that you need to be really good at? Aristotle says 3. Later, and even up to modern times, that gets expanded to 5, and we'll see how that happens.